Hi Gecko fans, this is Wally Kern with Supreme Gecko, and today we're going to talk about 5 things that are going to help you save time, energy, and money, and certainly keep your crested geckos happier and healthier. Join me. I just want to take 1 second and thank everybody for putting comments in all of these videos. I greatly appreciate it. Recently, I got a comment from Andrew from DEA Exotics. Let's take a look. Andrew's asking, with all of my experience, if I could do a video on crested geckos, sharing my past experiences to help everybody else keep their crested geckos. So that's the topic of today's video. Well, Andrew, you really have me thinking here. What if I could go back 20 years ago and talk to a younger me and hopefully prevent any mistakes that I've made over the last 20 years? How valuable would that be? Boy, you really have me thinking here. Dear younger me, where do I start? If I could tell you everything that I have learned so far, then you could be one step ahead. Every mountain, every valley, through each heartache you will see, every moment brings you closer to who you were meant to be. Dear younger me. But unfortunately, I can't go back. Hold on just a second. What is that? Wait a minute. Is that what I think it is? Wait a minute, Andrew. Are you telling me you built a time machine out of a DeLorean? Oh, my whole crested gecko collection for just a little bit of plutonium. So let's go ahead and take a trip back to November 5th, 1955. Wait a minute, sorry. Let's go back 20 years ago, and I'm going to share some of the experiences that I've had that hopefully will help you, too, to keep your crested geckos healthier and happier. Stick around because you're really going to enjoy number 4. Number 1. Now, you probably already know this, but crested geckos are nocturnal. What? Nocturnal? Hello? You go to a reptile show, you go to a pet store, they bring out a crested gecko, it's jumping all over the place, it's active, they let you hold the crested gecko. How can a crested gecko be nocturnal? Well, they absolutely are. As the sun comes up, they get sleepy and they want to go to bed. Now, does that mean the crested geckos aren't active during the day? Well, you can bring them out, you can hold them, you can handle them, let them jump around, but really they're a nighttime gecko. So what does this mean? Well, when the sun starts setting down, they're starting to wake up. What do they do when they wake up? They want to play and they want to eat. Back 20 years ago, I used to feed and mist crested geckos on my schedule. So in the middle of the day, I would go down and I would put the food out and I would mist their enclosures. And that's okay, but really, again, they're nocturnal. They're more active at night. So what I do now is I feed and I mist just before lights go out. So if my timer is set for 9 o'clock, I'm down there at about 8 o'clock putting the dishes of food out and I'm misting their enclosures. Now I've made this comment in other videos, but we'll feed on a Monday, let's say, and then we'll mist on a Tuesday, and then we'll refeed on the Wednesday. We'll take out the old dish and we'll put in a new dish of food. Here's a really key point. If you're feeding crickets, don't feed them in the morning or in the middle of the day. Feed them at night so that when the crickets go in, the crested geckos are right there to start eating them. Otherwise, the crickets are running around bothering the crested geckos all day long. Point number 2. Oh my gosh, I wish I could go back 20 years ago and tell myself this. Try to set up similar, consistent enclosures. Did I know 20 years ago that I would have over 50 enclosures? I certainly didn't, but I knew that I would have 2 or 3 or 5 or 10. That's just how I am. So when I started 20 years ago, I had different size enclosures. I had 20 highs and 20 extra highs and plastic bins. I had just all kinds of different enclosures. What do I have today? I have 20 highs and 20 extra highs and plastic bins. I never went back and replaced all of those enclosures. Boy, I wish I could start over and have every single enclosure exactly the same. And I know this is a really difficult point because you don't know when you start off if you're going to have one crested gecko or a pair, or if you're going to have 50 or 100 or more. By having the same type of enclosure, same size, same dimensions, it helps so much to clean and feed and maintain those animals. Even now, with kind of an eclectic set of enclosures for my crested geckos, I still have all the decor, everything in the same arrangement in every single one of the enclosures. I have the same decor, plastic plants, and decorations. I always have a hide box, always have a food dish, I always have a water dish in the same exact place in every single enclosure. It helps so much to go in and feed and mist and maintain and check for eggs. Have everything the same. Consistency is a key. But I tell you, if you can plan for 5 or 6 years in the future of where you might be with your collection, it would help out so much. You'll enjoy the space, you'll enjoy the time working with your animals so much more. Can you imagine a bank of racks like these? Everything in the same place, everything looking the same. Aren't these just beautiful setups? I guess you guys aren't ready for that yet, but your future self is going to love it. Point number 3, what you feed your crested geckos. This really brings back some memories. When I started keeping crested geckos 20 years ago, the big thing was that I was told was to feed baby food. What? Crested geckos love baby food, and you can put some calcium in the baby food and they'll just eat it up. Well, they do. I fed for months and months using baby food. Wow. But I went online, I went to a couple of the different forums. There were no Facebook groups back then, and I found people saying baby food isn't the best thing to feed them. There's this dry powder called, well, I'm not going to say the R word. There's dry powdered food that you can mix with water, and it has all the nutrients, all the ingredients that you need to keep them healthy. Well, I moved away from baby food that minute. I've got to say that I fed powdered food for probably a year until I realized that other people were feeding the powdered food, but they were feeding insects as well. Why are insects important? Because it adds protein to their diet. Are there foods right now, powdered foods, that have the protein already added? Absolutely. I still feel that it's so important to feed crickets, mealworms, dubia roaches to your crested geckos as adults and as babies to make them healthier. I've seen significant weight gains in my females when feeding insects. And weight gains for females makes them healthy. Weight gains for females makes them ready for egg production. I've actually gone on Facebook groups where they've said that feeding crickets is not a good thing for crested geckos. I can't wrap my mind around that because in nature you know they're eating bugs and they're eating the nectar of fallen fruit, and they get both at the same time. I recently watched a video where it said that there's different seasons in New Caledonia where the crested geckos are used to eating insects at one time of the year and the nectar at other times of the year, and they don't switch back and forth. And that's potentially why a crested gecko won't eat its insects when you offer them. I don't believe that whatsoever. My schedule is pretty basic. I feed crested gecko diet Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then insects over the weekend. I think that makes for a healthier crested gecko, especially the females, and I especially think that makes for a healthier baby crested gecko that will grow faster than normal if just fed on the crested gecko diet. My suggestion is to feed the crested gecko diet and feed insects. Point number 4, your crested geckos will shed, and they might have shed issues. It's their density. I mean, it's their destiny. You probably already know that you should be misting your crested gecko enclosure. We mist every other day. It helps keep up the humidity, but it also provides moisture for them to drink. I often read on social media where crested gecko keepers are having problems with the shed of their crested geckos, and the answer that typically comes after that is you're not misting enough. Your enclosure isn't as humid as it should be. I feel there's 2 potential problems that could be causing shed issues in your crested geckos. The first is, are you providing the right nutrients to your animals? Are you routinely feeding your crested gecko diet on a schedule? If you are, that's great, but you also have to mist, as you probably also know. The nutrients in the crested gecko diet are water soluble and really need that moisture to be consumed by the crested geckos. We also always provide a secondary humidity place for the crested geckos. As babies, we provide paper towel in their small enclosures so they have a place to go to always get hydrated. For adults, we use a humid hide or a lay box as well. But here's the thing with misting. If you're misting and you're still having shed issues, the problem might be that you're misting too much. Always, always, always allow your enclosure to completely dry out before you remist. Everybody's environment is different. Some people might have a more humid house. Some people might have a drier house. Before you mist the next time, check your enclosure and make sure all the area is completely dry before you mist again. Maybe I've had too much coffee. Maybe I should go with a tab or maybe a Pepsi free. On to point number 5. So if you've picked up your very first Crested Gecko or your first pair, or you've had some for a while and you're thinking about breeding, make sure you do the research. Make sure you look up, absolutely make sure that you look up how to take care of your Crested Geckos, all the important information to care for your Crested Geckos as best as you can. But also do the research on breeding. Now, this is for you future Crested Gecko breeders. If you're even thinking about breeding Crested Geckos for a business purpose, putting them on a website, putting them on social media, and selling Crested Geckos, make sure you do your research on the different morphs, how to sell Crested Geckos, what are the better morphs to sell, what's hot in the market. There's so many great breeders out there. Make sure you go on everybody's site to see what they're working with. It's so important to know the different morphs that you want to work with 2 or 3 or 5 years in the future rather than what looks good for you right now. And I know this is really, really tricky because everything probably looks good to you right now. Again, when I started out with Crested Geckos, there really weren't pages on Facebook showing all these gorgeous, gorgeous animals, all the different types of morphs. Not a lot of people were breeding Crested Geckos for profit. So I started off with probably 10 different pairs, and it was just a mess of the different types of colors and patterns and everything. It probably took me 2 or 3 years to really understand what I was looking for. And that was the red Crested Gecko, red Harleys, pinstripes, super Dalmatians, things like that. It might take you a year or two. That's okay, but do your research. Keep looking at the different animals that are available out there. Check prices, check availability, because you really want to set yourself up for the future. If you're not sure, ask questions. There's so many great breeders out there that will answer every single question that you have. Now, why don't you make like a tree and get out of here? Hold on, I'm sorry. Why don't you take a look at some of these videos on Crested Geckos and hopefully get some more pointers from the Supreme Gecko channel, and then you can make like a tree and leave. Thank you very much for watching. I appreciate it. We'll see you next video.